Hello and welcome back. As you'll recall, the last time we created a graph to answer the question, which type of plant will decompose the quickest and which will decompose the slowest? Water saver plants, water spender plants, or non-native plants? And to answer that question, we made a graph. If we look at our graph, we can see that water savers have the highest percent mass loss, which means that water savers are the ones that decompose the quickest. But how do we know if this data is statistically significant? In science, we have a calculation that we can use to see if data is statistically significant. To do that, we will be looking for the standard deviation. Thankfully, this is something Google Sheets can help us out with. So to calculate standard deviation, we'll be using formulas. So I'll be moving this graph down, and we'll be calculating standard deviation. To calculate standard deviation, much like any formula in Google Sheets, you start with an equal sign. Instead of average, however, you type stdev. Much like the last time, we're always starting with the first result, and since we're calculating for water savers, we're selecting the first result for water savers, and then holding shift, move down until every one is selected. Once we have selected every result in the water savers, we close it off with a parentheses and hit enter. We'll do the same for water spenders and non-natives. So again, equals stdev. Click on the first result for water spenders, shift down to highlight all of them, and close parentheses. And lastly, non-natives. Again, equal stdev. Click on the first result, shift down, highlight, close parentheses, and enter. Now we have the standard deviation. To add it to our graph, we'll be clicking on these three dots, edit chart, but this time we'll be hitting customize and editing the series. So first, we'll start with water savers. We can't apply it to all of them together since they all have different standard deviations, so we'll do it one by one. We'll want to apply error bars. As you see, they give us a few options, one of which is standard deviation, but this is not what we will be selecting. If we try and select standard deviation, Google Sheets will try to use all of the results in the table to create its own standard deviation. This is not what we're looking for. So we will be clicking on constant, and where the value goes, we'll be typing the value for water savers, which is 2.15. Then we hit enter. Next, we move to water spenders, select the error bars, constant, and the value is 0.77. Next and last, we'll select non-native plants. Again, error bars, constant, the result is 4.89. Now that they all have their standard deviations, we can close our chart editor. I'll be teaching you how to interpret standard deviations and what this tells us about the significance in our graph. I'll be teaching you how to interpret standard deviation and what it means. So as you can see, the error bars all have different measurements. What that means is that the data has very different spreads. If we see that the error bar is large, it means that the measurements are spread out. For a result to be statistically significant, the bars should not overlap. So for example, water spenders and non-native plants, their difference is not statistically significant because the small bar overlaps with the big bar from non-native plants. However, the result between water savers and water spenders are statistically significant because the bars do not overlap. Now, I'll be asking you all to go to each of our other questions where you have already made graphs, and now I want you to add the standard deviations for all of these.